What up, YouTube? I've got a really cool video that I think we're going to do from scratch today, and that is building your own granular pack by setting up a bunch of randomization in a phase plant patch. Now, the goal or the abstract of today, excuse the hair, it's wet, is to set up an evolving patch that's going to give you a bunch of different timbres and characteristics out of every time you push, like, just a single note, which in this case is going to be C, and then we can create a bank using that in order to then put back into phase plant for granular synthesis. So if that sounds interesting to you, this is going to be a long-winded video, but this is great for just putting some life into phase plant's granular synth, which I think is really awesome. Quickly, we have a giveaway. As soon as I hit 20,000 subscribers, somebody can get dist tube culture. Again, that's dist tube culture. Somebody said that I didn't say it very clearly. If you don't know what that is this guy right here, which is one of my favorite distortion plugins right now. It sounds amazing. It blows my drums up and I love it. And yeah, if you want a copy of it or want a chance to win a copy of it, subscribe to the channel, help me get to that 20,000. I don't think it's asking too much. So we have a blank canvas, and this is what we are going to be working with. And I think that what better way to start off this project than to put in a wavetable that is just this. So because phase plant has so many modulators, because it has so much stuff that is built into this, what we're going to do is start to try to guess and think about how many different ways we can create movement at random within this patch. And at that time, we will be sampling, which I'll pull up in a second, in order to pull everything out and begin to start cutting from. So let's begin. We have a wavetable. The next thing that I'm going to do is use a limiter. And now what we're going to do is grab some source of FM. And I like to use a wavetable as well. We can build our own wavetable if we want to, and like you can go as far into depth of this as you wish. But by having something like this, and then also switching this one, you see that we're already getting a lot of variation. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to set this up here to where I am going to modulate how much FM is being applied to this. So and then if we wanted to, we can also do something with ring modulation as well. So that just quickly looks like this. You're going to take the output of this and apply this to the level here. Let's go ahead and make another envelope like this. And we are going to apply this to this guy. And let's just set this at, like, I don't know, 19 semitones or something. This works pretty well. You don't have to do it, but it's just a matter of, whatever. Just take a listen. So from this, we don't really want to modulate pitch, but maybe one other thing that we can do is just be aware of going from something that sounds very close or very thick, as if stacking four voices kind of like this, to a detuned sound, and then also changing the spread. So between all these different factors of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's so many things that we can get that are going to be infinite, relatively infinite, yeah, through what we're about to do now. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and hop into these randoms here. And I'm just going to turn these down to this. And what we're going to do on all of these is right click and go here to where we're going to pull the threshold to be at the very bottom. Threshold. And same thing here, which is the threshold. So now we can set these to trigger different points of time within these decays and attacks. So if I move this up, And then let's say I'm going to do this with this one. Maybe we can move the decay on this. That basically means that I'm going to add a third one here and move this down this way. But this basically means that anytime this is triggered, it's going to kind of sometimes play a pluck, sometimes it's going to play a really long sound. There's so many different like ways to kind of cut this up, but I need to make sure that this is set to 100%, kind of like so. And now, as you can see, we can get a bunch of different sounds that are varied in either pluck, or we can set another modulator here or another set of modulators to adjust the attack. Now, I will say that I do this a lot in making basses, and you can apply this to basses, but for today, I think that I'm just going to keep the register relatively high and also try to focus more so on keeping things like as a key or maybe even a pad. You can't always change all of this into a bass, and like I said, that's usually what I end up doing, but we're not going to do something like that. So I'm just applying these randoms now to the same thing with the attack on all of these. So we're going to get drastically different results here in a second. So let me make sure that this can go up to like a second. Same thing with this, and you can see that it's triggering something different. So we're going to move this all the way down, kind of like so, and then right click on each of these to the same thing to where it's going to re-trigger every single time we hit a MIDI note. This is really the hard part, just this right here, because once you have this, and this is already, you know, kind of somewhat set up, now all we have to do is randomize everything else. So if I were to maybe grab, first of all, let me close all of these because we don't need to touch them anymore, but we can create a new group just to kind of stay somewhat organized, if I can find it. And now what I will do is just start applying all these different randoms here to different stuff. So I can do something like this. I can do something like this, maybe on this guy. Do something like this on this guy. And perhaps we can even grab another one here to where we can modulate the detuning. So turn that down. And then we can start, we're gonna have to mix and match at some point. I guess you don't necessarily have to, but I kind of like to, because I'm always trying to do what's called creating an interaction with different effects. The reason why I wanted all of these to be different was because they're triggering at 0, and I don't necessarily, or I don't always want the modulation to be static. It's only on the volume that I'm going to keep things consistent, because it's going to create an inconsistent volume shape otherwise, to where like it might cut out and then come back up, and I don't want to cut that up. I just want it to be a single sound. So it's purely an organizational thing. You can do whatever you want. This is just why I do it. So yeah, there's that. So all of these, even though I wasn't playing C, are all completely different sounds. And because of that, we have a lot of options now. The first thing that we can do is we can create a wavetable. I do have masterclasses on creating wavetables, but for now we're just going to keep it relatively simple. So I'm just going to create some kind of shape. And also the wavetable stuff is more so for basses, if anything. But yeah. So now that we've done that, you can see that we've created a custom wavetable. We can go ahead and do that with this one as well, just to where we're drawing in harmonics. This is the fundamental. You don't have to have a fundamental, but sometimes it helps. We can also add a peculiar harmonic if we wanted to. So that one was a third. This one can be a fifth. We can pull back on the third and the second, and then just create some weird little shape. Happy little trees, right? Now that we have that, you can see that this is morphing in between all this though. And we've got this relationship of this going here for the ring modulation and this going here for the FM. And of course you can stack more of this if you want to. So So the next step to this would be to start applying some different kinds of effects. So use them all, right? Bit crush, chorus, comb, compressor, distortion, dual delay, ensemble, filter, flanger, all, like I'm not going to list all of these, but use them all, everything, randomize everything, except for two things actually. For now, stay away from the pitch shifter unless if it's octaves, but even still, I don't really find it to be that necessary. And two, avoid the frequency shifters because these are going to change the overall pitch of the sound. Which, if you're trying to just get regular effects, then you can do that. But what I'm trying to do is get usable and tonal sounds out of this generator to where I can import everything as C. It will just make things so much easier for me. So let's do some very slight distortion and let's get into kind of just jamming this up here to where we can start to apply some of this stuff. And you can map things how I normally do on the ARCANUM series, where like you can map macros up here and have all of that being dictated and whatnot, but I don't think that it's quite necessary for this patch. It really is just a factory, if you will, about what we are creating. So I'm going to pull off of this guy and we can modulate and see what that sounds like. Cool. Now, one thing that will make a big difference is we can apply a filter to this, kind of like so. So that way this will be bound by the initial. But now that we have that, we can actually grab one of these guys and move this around. So So next up, we can do something kind of like a delay, and hopefully you get the point where this is going. And I usually do things to the nth degree, so there is that, but we can mess with the feedback here. And maybe we can start from a shorter time. Cool, let's go ahead and throw a convolution reverb on here. We can use the Stairway University. Doesn't really matter. Let's use this one. I don't remember what that's supposed to be. But on this, we can modulate the mix. And sometimes you do want to be mindful. So for example, okay, so the spread is going to this one. So maybe what I could do is keep that. So that way, whenever it spreads out, we introduce more reverb. And you see what I'm saying? Like it could be, you can kind of like be tactful with how you create relationships between effects, but it makes sense, right? If you spread something out, then you can create tails with it. If you want something to be very upfront and focused, then you might apply more distortion to changing the wavetable to something with more harmonics. You don't have to do that. It's just a means of like, here's how you can, I guess, put control to the chaos. Right, so now we're getting a bunch of different sounds. We can continue with like a reverb or something. And I'll have you know, like this might seem like a super complicated patch, but this is actually pretty reserved for me. I usually go way crazier into stuff, but this is just an example about how you can, you know, apply stuff. I'm getting ready to introduce this rack right here, which is a multi-pass rack. This is called the Final Neurochain. The Final Neurochain. No, but what it does is it just makes everything below 100 hertz in mono via mid-side EQ, and then if I need it, it's a little bit of OTT and then compression on the low end. So from here, we can keep going. I mean, you know, this kind of comes into, do you want this sound to me, it's all about timbre. That's what I would want to focus on. But do you want this sound to get like, you know, more aggressive? Do you want it to get more dreamy and ethereal? Do you want it to do a mixture of both? There isn't really a right or wrong answer, but kind of what we're trying to pull from this is kind of just being aware of all those things. And maybe you want a combination of all of that. But, you know, maybe when the chorus and reverb pull up, you pull back on the distortion, or maybe you add distortion to the reverb to try to create a very, you know, thick wall of sound or something. And at any point in time, you know, you can always add other racks to this if you wanted to. You can always add all different kinds of snap heap or multipass, or, you know, if you have the ARCANUM series, then you can do something like that too. But it's not required, you know. So really just like do this until like you find something that's kind of cool that will give you a bunch of different results. But what I'm really looking to do here is just create as varied of a sound each time I push C as possible. So what I could also do is change the polyphony to 1, so that way everything will re-trigger. It doesn't cut the tails off, but sometimes that can help you with like overlapping sounds. So that might be something useful. Now, if you don't know what rolling sampler is, that is kind of the key to this, which allows you to basically pull out anything for the duration that it's recording, and it will not save into your hard drive unless if you pull this out, which means that it saves into RAM, but this is one of the fastest ways to resample. Now, I just wanted to show you this concept, not because we're ready to do this quite yet, but just as a means of here's how you can get this really fast. But what I'm going to do, for the sake of cutting this up and making it very easy to work with, is I'm going to set this to a bar like this. Maybe half a bar. That should be plenty of time. And I'm going to loop this now and set this recording duration of the rolling sampler. Oh, I don't need that. Set the duration of this recording sampler all the way to say like 45 seconds. Let's just do a minute and see what we get. So we should get 30 different sounds if we start this right at the beginning, right? So the other thing too is, you know, you are not limited to whatever effect racks you use within this. You can use different stuff like Portal, anything that will change the timbre, I guess. But I just wanted to give you like a quick concept about how you can start with something relatively simple. The other thing is that we can also do something like this if we wanted to. And let's say we want to apply this envelope here. Where is this going? Okay, so we can apply the same envelope to, I think I messed up here. Where's this going? Yeah, oh, that's fine. No, where's this going? Okay, so that's going there. So what we wanted to do, sorry, is we wanted to take this and apply it to this guy. There we go. And now we can take that same one and apply this as well, and then we can shift this here. So tons of different sounds, right? Tons of different sounds. Now, something else that we can do, maybe to even add more variation to this, is I'm just going to use one randomizer for this because I'm not going to be so pedantic, but we can limit the band limit whenever this moves. And so what that means is that every once in a while, this is going to limit the, sorry for being redundant, but it's going to pull back on how many harmonics is allowed through the wavetable, and that's going to soften the sounds up. So maybe I'll keep this one where it needs to be. Cool. So Perhaps one last thing that we can do is add some distortion, because again, like I said, I'm doing this from scratch, so sometimes I want to just play with this and like, you know, have random things happen. But sometimes I want to, you know, explore and do all different kinds of stuff. It really just depends on what you're going for. But let's go ahead and do something like this and see what that sounds like. I'm also going to turn the duck up, so. Great. Now that we have that, we are going to set this to repeat at every half bar, and we're just going to watch the rolling sampler. Actually, let me just pull this out because that's going to be easier. One thing that I might also do is try to normalize this, so maybe I'll clip everything. Let me grab an oscilloscope quickly. An oscilloscope. And I'm already pushing this through a limiter up top, but I'm going to clip this. I've got a couple now, but we're just going to use saturate and go hard clip, and then I'm going to see what this looks like. So okay, so for the most part, it's relatively all a similar size. So now that we have this though, we need to move that over on this side. I'm just going to let this play. So as I hit play, we're basically just going to record as many of these as this will give us. So okay, so that's more than good enough. So now that we have this, we can grab this and separate this here and cut this up by every half beat, which is pretty cool, right? So, or every, looks like almost every bar even. Maybe that's because it's kind of late. So we'll make an exception right here and just kind of cut these two together. So we can take this one and do this one. But normally you shouldn't really have to do this by hand. I mean, I guess every once in a while you might have to like go back in there. But what we can do is, if you want to be lazy, is go slice and place. We're going to go every half bar on straight. And now we've got a sound for each of these. And what we can do if we want to control this a bit more is we can do something like this and go in and just separate these. Don't worry about the fades yet. I'm going to show you how to get around that in just a second. That one's okay. We'll move this one here. You can even keep some of these if you want to. Doesn't really matter, but you know, we can go back and just edit some of these guys. That one's kind of meh, but we can turn it up. Can move this guy. That's kind of cool. We can just cut it. That's kind of samey, so not every one is a winner, which is totally fine. That's fine, we're going to keep that. We can do that kind of coin sound in here. And then we can kind of go in here and just kind of move that over to where it's a bit longer. Almost done here. That's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and make this longer. Make that longer. They don't all need to be like half a beat. It's really just like capturing the entire motion of the sound. So that's what is coming down to here. So if you want to skip ahead, you're more than welcome to. We're almost done, but We'll just take that. And then we could take this. And then we'll finish up with this. So now that we have all of these, we can highlight all of them and go like this. We're going to hit Command R and just type in C-Synth and hit enter. Sorry, so that didn't work, so we'll have to go in here and type in C-Synth, and then it should label all of these. And now what we're going to do is, with all of these highlighted, we're going to hit Command B. And you will see that we have all of these, right? So now what we have to do is, dear God, let's go ahead and create a new folder. It's over here. And we are going to drag this into this guy, like this, and we've got 23 files. So now that we have this, our group of 23 files, we can call this Granular Food September 3rd. And let me see how big this is. This is 9.3 megabytes, so I'll leave this in the Discord and free stuff. If you're not part of the Discord, then just click on the link tree in the description, because it's not really that big of a deal. But now what we're going to do is we're going to hit Command T. We're going to go to our kilohertz folder. It's going to be somewhere different for all of you, so I can't really speak on where it's supposed to be. But we can go into, I believe there should be samples here. Yeah, user samples, just like this. And let's go back here and drag in this folder. So we'll go to desktop, go to Granular Food, drag this into user samples. And now what's cool is we can pull up a new instance of Faceplant. Go into a granular engine and find this. So user, granular food, and there you go. And what's beautiful about this is that they're all tuned to C, so you don't have to manipulate these. But now that you have this, you can actually get into, you know, creating different kinds of synths and stuff with this, right? So we can modulate the positioning of this, you know, maybe make this into a pad or something, but it's going to work because we already tuned it. Then we can also set how big we want this to be. So maybe we don't want this to drift quite as far, but maybe just somewhere around, there we go, here, as you can see. Then we can set this to go back and forth. You can add some dual delay, grab a limiter. Some reverb, wherever that is. You know, if that doesn't work, we can just go to a new sample. Maybe change this into a chord. And then you're starting to create some really pretty stuff. You know, if we want to make the grain size smaller and maybe create a different kind of pad. can honestly add a filter to this. There you go. And, you know, this is just one use case of creating something that's kind of pretty, but I mean, how cool is that to be able to, you know, just take a day and jump into the other synth and create a bunch of different arbitrary stuff that is, you know, we can just call this C generator. And you can do, you know, you can go as in depth with this as you want, but what's really cool is that it gives you just more material to work with. And the other thing that sometimes can be super helpful is like if you're trying to make something sound somewhat tonal or something and you have like a snare or something. So I say something a lot apparently, but let's say I've got, let me just type in one of these snares that I've made in the past. Apparently I don't know how to make kicks, so I'm not going to show you that of how I make kicks, because some people in my audience are just, yeah, things, but what can you say? So, you know, something kind of like a snare here. But sometimes it can be kind of cool to throw a different convolver on here and then to go into this stuff and be like, all right, well, I'm going to try to add just a little bit of character to this by very little, or you can add a lot. But you see, you can add different kind of characteristics that are somewhat tonal. And then if you were to do this in like Snap Heap or something, which I'm sure I already have done in the past, but let's say I add a convolver to this that had the same stuff like this. I'm just going to kind of give you an example, and I'm not necessarily looking for the right answer on this, but just as a means to explore. So we've got this sound, right? Something that you can do is grab either a frequency shifter or a ring mod or both, and you can start to play with different spaces based off of the pitching of this. So now that we have something like that, we can go back, and it can create a little bit more space for your snare. So there's a lot of different, like that's a whole different tutorial in its own right. If you want to check out my drum master class, you're more than welcome to. But yeah, this is just you know, a super hack for things that have random on them, like phase plant and all that. But you can definitely do this in any other synth. You can just kind of let it run wild and figure out like a fast and efficient way to chop some of this stuff. But this is how I made a lot of stuff for my Poly and Play expansion, because there are no synths in that. So you have to have a lot of different sounds in order to like make your own instruments. But doing it this way, and even if you were to take this and throw this into, you know, a granular synth in Bitwig or whatever, it just again creates more variation for you to work with. And yeah, sometimes it can be arbitrary, sometimes you get a bunch of useless stuff, but I think that in this case there's enough information for you to play with and go off and make your own things. But anyways, I hope that was interesting to you. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you've got any hacks like this for creating sound factories is what we call it. But yeah, I don't know. It's a kind of a hack that not a lot of people talk about. So anyways, thanks so much. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Help me get to that 20K. And I will see you all in the next one.